listening to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Send your questions and comments to DJ at ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, your hosts. We call them the Wise Ones, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And you should call us the Content Ones, because that's what we are.
That's right. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Content. And before we get started, folks, just a little inside baseball. Let me ask the studio monitor, do we have to get off early, or are we good tonight, Scott?
I don't know. I think we have
We're doing 2 hours tonight, folks.
We do have it a live 8 o'clock and a 9 o'clock, actually. So the answer is
be off
about 2 minutes till.
2 minutes too. So we're gonna speed this up. Thank you very much, Scott. And I am Content, and I am Michael Lyons, and this show is about contentment, or rather, really, how do people define contentment, and what makes you content, and
what is it?
It's sort of fascinating, because if you, I think if you ask. Well, not everybody, but if you ask people what they're really looking for in life, and you kind of drill down a little bit, they'll say lots of things. But I think it all does boil down to contentment, and then if you turn it around and they say that, let's say they say, well, I'm just looking for contentment. You say, well, what is it? What's contentment? And people will look at you kind of a funny look and say, well, just, everything's good. Everything's just right. I'm happy. But it isn't necessarily, they can't put a list together that would be a universal, if I have these things, or if I do this stuff, or if I get these accomplishments, or whatever, that I'll be content. People talk about, there was a movie several years back where they kind of talked about this idea of completing all these things on your list. I think it was called their bucket list. And the kind of the gist of that idea is that there's a whole bunch of things that you want to do in the time that you have left on the planet. And those things, become your sort of journey to contentment. If I can just kind of check off everything on my bucket list, I can be content. And the implication is, and then I can die. I can die happy, so to speak. And it was sort of a silly movie, and it was a silly premise, but I think it resonates with people, because one of the things that kind of drives people to do a lot of the crazy things that they do is this idea that when I get them all done, then I can stop. I can be content. I can be happy. Yet it is also true, and Margaret, I'll say, is that people will spend their whole lives kind of chasing this idea of contentment without ever, the old saying, stopping to smell the roses and actually being content. It's almost like they're waiting for somebody to just stop them in full stride, stop them right in their tracks and say, you've reached it. You have reached, your GPS has brought you to contentment. You may stop now.
Contentment is a setting on your GPS.
Wouldn't it be great?
Isn't that an interesting thought?
Take me to Happy Acres, please. But I think a lot of people's kind of, toes up in the air, running around as fast as they can, is this idea that when I'm done, somehow I'll reach contentment. Like it's a destination.
Remember in the previous show where that image of the sunflower was there, and the sunflower turns its face towards the sun to receive the sun's rays for warmth and nourishment, life in general, and receiving life. But it also casts a shadow the sunflower's shadow upon the ground. And that's your black and white, two-dimensional representation of what the sunflower is actually doing. And that's what I think a bucket list is.
Cool. Please expound.
Well, it's just this image, a projection. I mean, the sunflower is participating in life. It's taking in energy, it's drinking water through its roots and nutrients and growing, and sensitive to where the sun's rays are. It follows the sun. That's what it always does. And I read something which was kind of interesting as well. When the sun is not up in the sky, sunflowers turn and face each other. Which is like, energetically, what does that look like? You know, are they like sharing chi energy? Are they? But it was interesting to me. And when the sunflower is engaged in receiving the sunshine, participating in that moment, converting everything into what it needs, living the way a sunflower is supposed to live, the shadow that the sun casts on the ground is that black and white two-dimensional shape of the sunflower, and it moves very slowly as the sun rises and sets across the ground. But that's a bucket list to me. If at 3 o'clock this is what it's supposed to look like, if at 4 o'clock this is what's supposed to look like, at 12 noon this is what it's supposed to look like, it's like, tick, I've reached my 12 o'clock position.
Right. I like that. I like that analogy a lot, because the other way to think of the bucket list is, have I reached contentment yet? Let me look at my list. Let me check. Because it becomes an obstacle in many ways, and just another the task of completing the list, it almost obscures the quote unquote things that you must do.
But that's what I mean. This is, instead of participating in life, very simply the way the sunflower is, you're making notations on the ground of, this is what the shadow looks like.
Right. Or instead of another, maybe more germane, is instead of being in the moment and experiencing it, you're taking a selfie.
Yeah. It's kind of like what selfies are.
Yeah.
Exactly what selfies are. It's just the outward form on a two-dimensional plane.
Yes. I mean, we right, and we all know people who instead of seeing that sunflower or watching a sunrise or a sunset, are busy taking pictures of it on it used to be that you'd have a camera, but now you just have you yank out the cell phone and start snapping away, and rather than experience it in the moment and put it into your eternity bank. I got it right. Wow. Wait a minute. This must be a special night, and not even on decongestants, which is amazing. But truly, one of the cardinal sins of the culture that we happen to be living in right now is that people have disassociated themselves from their experiences in favor of taking pictures of them.
Right. They would rather believe the two-dimensional image on the screen than the person that it's supposed to represent.
Well, yes, or just talk about their own heart rather than fulfill, like the sunflower does, fill itself with life and energy and convert it into what it needs, which is what, when you're experiencing those moments of a sunset, let's say, or a sunrise, it's supposed to be in the moment and fill your heart and And rather than do that, one of the cardinal sins of this kind of Instagram culture is that you're busy posting it to your feed instead of being there, and it's an odd way, like you said, sort of like the bucket list. It's an odd way of two-dimensionalizing, and actually kind of objectifying your own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird saying, not a weird saying, but it didn't happen unless there were pictures. Pictures or it didn't happen is the way people say. So you say, oh, I saw this incredible sunrise, and people reply, pictures that it didn't happen. Well, in other words, your word or your experience related is no longer valid unless you have these kind of two-dimensional representations, which,
validation? You need validation?
I think that the validation isn't the part that is. Yes, it's what they're really asking for. But what they're really saying is your memory and your description means nothing, but you being there sort of as, in essence, the other person's eyes and ears rather than your own, is what is more valid. More. It's turning you from an experiencer of a moment in your life to a chronicler of some experience for someone else to look at, and then literally not even experience, but just click by click, 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 click. And it cheapens it for everyone.
Right.
You become less than a being. You become this mobile camera. You don't get to fill up your heart with any experiences. And all you're doing is checking, taking the pictures and checking it off so you can get it to the feed so someone else can say, oh, that was a beautiful sunrise, click. That was a beautiful sunrise, click. The whole thing becomes this very much a bucket list or a treadmill of tasks to do rather than just simply experiencing it.
Just clicking. If your first concern, if you're watching something, and your first concern is, I need to take a picture of me here. That puts up a barrier for you to be present, because what it does is it hijacks your attention to trying to get it just right. And how many times do people take pictures to get it just right? And what happens? You miss it.
You miss it.
You literally miss the moment. You get a shadow form, two-dimensional shadow, that you can then share. But what does where does that go? It goes nowhere.
Nowhere.
It doesn't fill your heart. And if you think about it, isn't that what your life is? The whole purpose of your life is to fill your heart. Most people go, oh yeah, that's easy, Like, and then they equate it immediately to, well, gee, I need a lot of money to do that.
Well, I think you can get that on Amazon, pretty sure.
So, at that point, you need to define what filling your heart means. Is it a momentary happy moment, or are we talking about contentment?
Well, exactly. And I want to go back to something that you and I watched, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman, but he was basically a yogi. And we were both struck by, it was a sort of a documentary on his experiences, and without going into great detail, we were both struck by first of all, I would postulate, without you folks knowing who this is, that he was one of the most contented people I'd ever seen in my life. And at least from the representation that was in this short film. And one of the things that maybe illustrates it was, in essence, his conditions of living one would consider extremely primitive. Both the environment was sort of harsh. It was living in Nepal or the Tibetan mountains or somewhere way up high, far above the tree line. his shelter, his home where he lived. He said it was, it's cold in the winter and the roof leaks in the rain, and I here's where I cook and here's where I sleep and here, but none of that mattered. In other words, his experiences, his way of relating to his environment and his life had nothing to do with whether or not he felt it was, valuable to somebody else. It was all just what he was content and happy, and this was the way he wanted to live. And in essence, in fulfilling this volition of saying, this is what I want and this is what I have, and I like what I want and I like what I have. I'm content with what I have. And then if things would get better, I'm even more content. He related that initially he only had, some sort of very primitive spices, and now he felt rich because he had many spices. And you're like, he doesn't have a lot, but it was an obvious joy, almost a bliss that he was experiencing because of one thing. It wasn't all the environment, it wasn't where he was. It was that he was content in himself.
Mm-hmm.
So to abstract that, contentment is so far away from taking a selfie. It's so far away from a bucket list. Contentment is literally in the moment to moment, being, satisfied with who you are internally, regardless of where you are or what's happening or whether something is good going to happen or whether something bad happened yesterday. Because contentment doesn't deal with the future or the past. It doesn't deal with lists.
Right. He was content in his relationship with himself.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very deep state to be in. Because it's not just, I'm accepting myself kind of thing. It goes deeper than that. He was they call it tulku in Tibet, a self-realized monk who basically he would go into meditative states for months on end. And he needs to have, or when a monk does that, there is someone who comes and brings food and water to them periodically, but they don't interact with each other. He sort of just leaves it at the doorway, or there's a small door that they slide the food in, or whatever it may be. And he's there in meditation month after month after month. And most people will go, well, why are they doing that? What is this meditation stuff? And usually the first stage is stopping the mind, or being able to handle the thoughts that arise and fall. You literally begin to do an internal walk with yourself, taking who you are and how you feel and what you think, how you breathe, all of it into account. You begin to know yourself intimately. And then you take a step outside the physical form. And all of this is done because they are taking steps into that realm of true happiness and contentment. Different words in Sanskrit, but it's the closest we have in English
Mm-hmm.
to describe what the states that they have that they're going through. And we have, I guess it's on the website.
The Boss website that you should always check because it's part of your daily contentment ritual. Go ahead.
But there is a quote from the Dalai Lama. True happiness comes from having a sense of inner peace and contentment, which in turn must be achieved by cultivating altruism, love, and compassion, and by eliminating greed, anger, selfishness. The act of meditation puts you into contact with understanding the positive and negative energies that lie within you. Eliminating anger, selfishness, and greed. Can you imagine?
Well, yes, but the interesting thing about the Dalai Lama's statement there, and it's a very westernized focused statement because if you get into the discipline, the words are breaking apart the thing that it actually is. But the two words in the beginning, in the middle of the statement, rather, when he talks about what you're looking for, is true happiness comes from contentment. But I would say that those two get conflated all the time. People say, I'm content, therefore I'm happy, therefore I'm content. But they are different things in many ways. But I would say that contentment engenders happiness, and that even sadness you can be content with. You can be content with all sorts of things that other people would say, how can you bear up? How can you possibly not be in a puddle of goo on the floor? And yet, so privations or bad circumstances, you can still be in a state of contentment. You may not want these bad things to continue, but you are not discontented by them. So there's an internal sort of, let's call it, maybe discipline is the wrong word, but there's an internal sort of structure in the heart when one is contented, which in one way you could say turns whatever your circumstance is into one in which you can be happy. But happiness, is always a positive thing. Say, well, I'm happy.
I'd like to add another word in there.
Sure.
True happiness, for me, is defined by joy. Happiness itself is always dependent on what your external circumstances are.
Joy, but what I mean is joy and happiness are sometimes said to engender contentment. But I think contentment encompasses far more than just joy, although joy is certainly a tremendous emotion. And I think joy encompasses happiness. In other words, it's greater than in one regard.
Okay, my definition of happiness is the emotion, but joy is far deeper than that. Joy has a spiritual connection. That's how I define the words.
I'm not trying to define anything. The idea, though, is that positive experience, positive things like joy and love and happiness and many things people think are positive. I think people say, if I had all those things, I would be content. And if I don't have any of those things, or if those things are lacking, I'm discontent. But I would turn it around. I would just say that contentment can encompass even what would appear to be extremely negative or circumstances of great privation. We use this. You
Yes.
understand. But
I understand. What I'm saying is that contentment is a state.
Exactly.
It is not a thing.
Exactly. And that's you've cut to the heart of it, and I'm just kind of poking around. But for examples, this monk, this yogi, was content, and many people would think that his circumstances were the worst kind of privation.
Yeah.
Almost abject poverty. One would think, but he didn't care a whit. He was content, and from his contentment grew a great happiness and a great wisdom and a great peace came from his contentment. But at the core of it, that it was a heartfelt state of being, of contentment. You can see it in people. We use this example a lot, but in somebody like Mother Teresa, she was content in what many would consider extremely grueling, demanding circumstances, because she was doing what brought her contentment, to give, to love, to provide, to be a channel for grace.
Right.
And I think that contentment is realizing your being state. That's why it's difficult to define, right. And it's different for every person, because every one of us is a different being, and we have a different place of contentment, which is our being state. And then anything can be around it,
Mother Teresa was expressing unconditional love.
Mm.
And when you are engaged in the being state of unconditional love, nothing of the physical matters. What matters is the heart of the person that is in front of him. And that's all she cared about.
And I think to a large extent that was a place of contentment for her.
This is where the contentment rose from. And contentment in general rises from that fullness of the heart.
Yes.
When the heart is full, then the outside conditions cannot drain it.
Can't touch it.
Well, you may be touched by what you see.
Can't drain it. I like it. You're right. You're better. We'll tell you what. Let's take a little break, because we've gotten very heavy. We're going to go back to the studio. You be content for the next minute and a half, and we will come back and talk more about contentment.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the 4th Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhum.music.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened until the end of the broadcast. You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on ArtistFirst Radio. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Assume the crash position. Yes, welcome to the second half of The Soul of the Everyman, where the points no longer matter anymore. But tonight we're not about points, we're not talking about crash positions or test dummies or any of those things. We're talking about contentment, and I think the first half hour we really did range around a little bit, but your words are exactly correct, Margaret, that contentment is a state of being. It's a state of heart being. And as we said also, that for each and every person, and again on the website, we kind of said that contentment is difficult to define because it is a heart being state. It is individual for everybody's individual heart being. We are all unique, and what is our heart state may be very similar to another. In fact, if you find someone with whom you resonate, your heart states, your being heart states resonate, stick with them, because that's a good relationship, you know. And what fills us? What is the bliss? You know, what is the follow your bliss? What is our bliss? What is our being state contentment? Is different for every one of us. You know it when you do something and it resonates, or you meet someone and the energies just start to resonate, or to flow between yourself and this other person. And that has to do, very much with being in the heart, and in some ways connecting back up to why you were here. If you believe in purpose, and you believe in a purposeful life, a life which is channeling grace, which is connecting back to your ultimate spirit, has maybe not one purpose, but has purpose. And in fulfilling your being state, let's just say that unless you're a very odd being, you're not here to take selfies to fill your heart. That is not a being state. The being state, it will take you on the most amazing journey of contentment throughout your whole time on earth, from your birth through your ultimate death. You will be filling your heart all the time if you're following that being state, and you're in your bliss state. And amazing things your life will be full of amazing things. They may not, to everybody, seem like wonderful things. This yogi on the mountain that we spoke of in the last half hour, he was in a blissful being state. Others might think that that they would be living in some sort of a prison, but he was doing exactly what his being was here to do.
Right. And it was interesting because whenever he came out of those month-long, I forgot what they call it when they do that, secluded in a cave for months on end. There's a name for it. Anyway, when he would come out of it, he would walk to the town, and the minute people saw him, they just lined up and started following him. And someone may ask him, where are you going? He said, I am walking. And the gentleman that was the one who had been assigned to give him his water and his food said, yeah, we're just walking. And that's it. And then they would go through the town, and it was like the whole town came out to meet him. And they would always bring, how to say this, they would be asking him for blessing. That's the English translation. He would lay a hand on them, or one of the things is giving rice kernels out. They would give him rice kernels, and he would hand it out to all the masses, or you would see him blowing on the water bottles, and that's a form of blessing that they have. So it was interesting because when they talked to the monk, he said, they always ask for blessing. And then he started laughing. Because, why?
Why?
Because it is within you. Why do they need it from a source, from someone else?
Right.
They haven't found the source of blessing from within.
Right.
And it was just this marvelous moment. And it was exactly that. His eyes had, when he made that statement, his eyes lit up. And it was just this aura of happiness around him, just joy.
And you can see how people, when they attain, when someone attains this, whatever it is, their state of bliss, their being state, people start following them. Joseph Campbell's another wonderful example. Campbell developed this tremendous following. People who wanted to hear his lectures and see his films and do all these things. And he always used to laugh and just sort of be mystified by it. He said, I'm just doing what I want to do. I'm following my bliss. If you want to follow me or look at me or see or listen to what I have to say, that's great. Similarly with other charismatic people who seem to develop these tremendous followings, largely the following comes after they realize the heart state. Your heart state is not to go out and find a million people who will do what you want to say. That's dictatorship. That's dissolution. That's denying their humanity to somehow enhance your own ego. That's an ego state. This idea of a being state of bliss attracts people because they want that. Yes. They don't. He's laughing. The yogi was laughing because it's like, you can find your own bliss, and it may be very different from mine. But if you want me to bless you, I'll bless you. I don't care. I'll move along. His laughter was that he in very gentle ways saying, no matter how happy and content I am, I can't give it to you. I can't make you happy and content. Only you. Only you. And this is really the crux of the whole thing. And this is, maybe we're saying the point of the show too early. Only you can make you content.
Right.
Nothing external can do it.
It's true. And their exercise, I said this before, is by working to eliminate anger, selfishness, and greed.
Mm.
That state is not found in things. When you are concerned about things, greed does arise, and it's things for you, so selfishness does arise. And if someone takes it away or prevents you, then the anger arises.
Yep.
So it's understanding that you're more than the thing. There's something far more precious inside of you than the thing that's outside of you. And it's again, I go back to that sunflower representation. The important thing is that interaction with life, not the projection of the shadow on the ground.
Right. And, to bring it to more human level, people always say, well, money can't buy you love, or things can't make you happy. And it's very true. The trite way of putting it is that the happiest you'll ever be is to just be. When people are incredibly happy, nothing. You often will say that nothing else matters. I didn't need anything. I don't need anything. An example that probably everyone is familiar with is if you see a cat lounging on a bed in the sunshine, in a sun ray. You look at that and go, you're just struck by the moment that this cat is incredibly content.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that what makes animals would make animals so incredibly attractive is that their ability to be content far surpasses our own. They don't have the ego, constantly drumming on the head, trying to get you to pay attention to it and not be happy and do this and do that and do the other thing and this and I and do. The I do are always going to make you unhappy, going to push you out from your heart, going to take you to the outer edges of bucket lists and shadows and finding the Madison Avenue greatest thing, the greatest next thing, the greatest next thing, greatest next thing. That's all ego. That's all I.
Mm-hmm.
There is an I in happiness, but there's no I in contentment. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there isn't. Contentment. There's no ego in a contented state. There's tons of ego in selfies and in bucket lists.
Well, concept. The concept of ego, what you think you are, as opposed to being.
Exactly.
And it always fascinates me. So, what you think you are, that construct you put together, that image, that pattern, that this idea, that's more important than being able to interact with the world around you. And you say, no, I am interacting. Look, I took a selfie and here I am. And you're like, that's the construct. That pattern that you just put together is the construct. What do you remember of that time and place when you took the selfie? Without looking at the selfie, what did it look like? What was going on? What was the color of the sky behind you? What else was around you? Who was around you? Can you tell me without looking at the selfie? What was your experience in that moment? Was it joy? Was it sorrow? Was it disgust? Can you tell me?
Exactly. And true experiences that you put into your eternity bank are in your memory. Well, maybe not in your conscious memory, but they become part of the part of you which when you go back, or when you have your NDE and your life review, those are the parts that are there.
Yeah, that's what's gonna stand out when you have your life review.
It occurred to me when you were saying just now, the ideas of one of the ideas of Tolle, Eckhart Tolle, is sort of this idea of constructs, which are ephemeral, and certainly one of the more ephemeral constructs is this idea of taking a selfie or a picture or a shadow. They're all shadows, and they're all they come into being. They're there for a moment. They're there for a period of time, and then they just dissolve back into nothingness. But those eternal things, the eternal heart being state, it's there at the beginning of all things. It will be there at the end of all things. It's timeless. It's eternal, and it may not have a beginning or an end. And the things that get into that state become part of the eternity. Contentment opens you up to continually being in that state of interacting with the eternal. It sounds maybe too abstract or too hard, but it's the simplest thing that you can do. You merely be without all the I's on the outside. Yet it's difficult because we listen to the I's. We listen to the distractions. We have the bucket lists. The world tries to pull you away, and so this little monk or Tolle, who sat on the park bench for months on end, looking like
completely in bliss,
like a crazy person,
right?
But yet not. The being state that Tolle realized, the being state that this little monk realized, is available to everybody. Tolle says it all the time. Don't follow me. Do it. It's in you. It's the same sort of a bemused kind of. Why would you want to do that? That's what I do, and that's my bliss. But if you want to, it's fine. I don't care if you want to do that. But
makes me think of maybe Eckhart Tolle is actually a reincarnation of one of the monks, one of the tulkus, because the way he's experienced it and done it is very similar to the experiences that the monks go through.
The self-realized, yeah.
Very interesting. And he's a little German guy sitting on a park bench somewhere.
Right.
And then pretty much this can happen to anyone at any place at any time. Your circumstances don't have to be just right. You don't have to pay $2,000 to spend a week on some special
retreat or something.
It is embracing where you are and who you are right now.
And it becomes, as we mentioned earlier, this incredible attraction. The evidence of your bliss, the evidence of your contentment, is apparent to all, and the attraction is, I want that. Right. I at my very soul have a burning hunger for that contentment that I can see immediately on the other.
The yearning.
And there's a yearning there. And to the extent that you are contented is the extent to which you will be attractive to those who yearn for contentment, which is almost everybody else. But yet, it will always be different.
There's a... Gee, I wish I could remember what the name of the song was. Just a couple of lyrics that popped in my head. And it's talking about you and God. He, who is God, he put that hunger in your heart. He put that fire in your soul. Love is the reason to keep on believing. When you feel like giving up, And when you feel like giving in, love.
Yes, and that's another. We should probably go off on that just a little bit. Love is certainly very close to the center of the heart, and love is a being state. They say love is eternal. Happiness is not necessarily an eternal thing. You can be happy and unhappy, happy and unhappy. Contentment is an eternal thing.
Yes.
And so, go ahead.
And joy is eternal.
Joy can be an eternal thing too. It's
a definition. It's the difference in our definitions.
No, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I would say that if you are in a a contented being state, that is also a state of joy. If you're in a blissful, loving state, that is also a contented state. The contentment, joy, love, these things. Love doesn't mean that you don't have difficulties. You can be in love. You can have in tremendous, amazing love, and yet be in a circumstance where you are suffering amazingly difficult, challenging circumstances. But yet love is still there. Love doesn't mean that things are just puppies and kittens and Hallmark cards.
I believe people get confused over the word bliss. Because a Western mind thinks bliss just means you're happy. But bliss is the state of bliss is finding the purpose of your life and living it, which is far greater than the state of happiness.
Yes, yeah.
Because when you are living the purpose for which you are here, joy rises,
Yes.
Contentment rises.
Yes.
And your heart state is in love and compassion for those that do not have this.
Yes, and similarly, as we said, that is instantly recognizable to all of us, to everyone around you. Every other heart sees the contentment. They see the bliss, and every one of these words, unfortunately, falls short of the truth of the being state. However, to individualize it a little bit, every one of us is a being and has a being state.
Mm-hmm.
And my being state and yours and everyone else who's listening, all other 7 people, are going to be different. But yet each one of us can be contented. Each one of us can attain contentment.
Right.
And I think we're going to have to be content with, that sort of description, because you can't really put a handle on it, a formula. The books that say 7 easy steps to contentment, don't buy those books unless you want to, unless it brings you bliss. And I'm sure it brings the person who wrote the book bliss when they cash their royalty check. But there are no formulas. You mentioned that you have to still the mind, but that's the way of getting to the center and to be able to perceive what your bliss may be, or you find that what resonates, what makes your energy sing, what you find easy and fulfilling to interact with. That's a way of getting to your being state. But there's many, 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 many ways of getting to your being state. Finding someone who you can be in relationship with at a heart state is a way to get to your being state. And each one of these ways is as individual as we are ourselves. So there isn't a formula.
It's, again, and I think Campbell had said, follow your bliss.
Mm-hmm.
What I would suggest is just answer this question. What is it that makes your heart sing?
Mm.
It's just simple. You're not thinking about what makes your heart sing. It's not answering with thoughts and constructs or emotion or even food. What makes your heart sing?
Right. And then follow it. Because that
is the surest indicator that your feet are on a heart path. Right. And when your feet deviate from it, you know it in an instant because suddenly there's no more song.
There's no more song, or the song falters. And so, others have said it in many ways and better, but this is why we're here. We're here to pursue and realize contentment. And don't anyone ever tell you that you can't be content. Every moment, even if you spent your whole life being discontent, the next moment you can be, as long as you draw a breath. And so with that, I'm going to draw my last breath and say, I'm Michael Lyons.
Oh, for the show, you mean?
Yes!
And I'm Margaret, and thank you for listening.